Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD, Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities are not. With that, I'd like to introduce you to an incredible guest, Ronan. He's the CEO and co-founder of Dozen. He's aligning people with company goals, and know a little bit about that with Eva, your virtual assistant that I co-founded with David Yang. He is originally from Ireland and Cork area, and he's living in Los Angeles. And we're going to ask him some interesting things because I want to find out what the Gaelic Football Club is all about, because that sounds pretty interesting to me, and hear what he did with that. So with that, I'd like to bring him on board and have him introduce himself. Hi, Ronan.
Hi, Gary. How are you? Lovely to be here.
Now, how's the journey? So culturally, it's a whole lot different in Cork than it is in Los Angeles. How was that, like, culturally adapting to this thing, where, like you said earlier, the stuff that you had there would be on the news, but there in Los Angeles, it's everyday life.
Yeah, it was a bit of a transition. I think my wife and I have lived away before in Australia and Antigua and various different places. We kind of we get how the world works differently to how we do in Ireland, but LA is it's a whole different beast. It's I think when you ask me what I thought of LA, my answer is always it's got the best of everything and the worst of everything in one place. So the transition was fun. Let's put it that way. We're looking for adventure when we came here, and we certainly got that.
You're getting more than you bargained for, right?
That's for sure.
Now, I remember when I was out there the last time, I was at the Beverly Hills Hotel with with a well-known friend of mine, and we're sitting in there, and Henry Kissinger comes up and sits next to us, and we're talking to Henry Kissinger, and I was like, this is cool. But do you have any good stories like that where you're walking down the street and there's a celebrity and they seem like a nice person?
I think everyone's got their kind of celeb story in LA. I'm not sure what one I'll go with. I mean, Chris O'Dowd, the actor and comedian, played on our Gaelic football team, who you're very kind to mention our Gaelic football team here in LA. So that was a lot of fun, and there's a bunch of others as well that I don't want to be name dropping, Gary.
No, but it's interesting.
That's not cool in LA,
But when you're a tech guy from Silicon Valley, it's pretty interesting because we are a little bit different. So anyhow, what was the journey like from Paddy Power to Ticketmaster and now to founding Dozen? Because you go from having meetings to talk about meetings, right? When you're in a place like Ticketmaster. And then when you start your own company, you're driving it, and if it works, it's your fault, and if it fails, it's your fault, right?
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I think I might even just go back to kind of my early days, and I might even explain a little bit about me. But my initial role was actually in a company called Matchbook.com. So I was on the founding team. Two professional gamblers actually set up offices in Cork. They could have picked anywhere in the world, and they picked Cork because of the quality of the coffee and somewhere called the English Market. It's a long story, but we set up a company, and we went from pre-product to just north of 1.2 billion a year in turnover in 4 years. Now, we didn't know what we were doing. We were like 5 just really green kids out of college, and they gave us the resources and the keys to the kingdom, and we kind of went after it. It was great. It was acquired a few years later, and from there went into what was a little bit of a bigger online Irish gambling.
How many of you were on the? So there were 5 of you on this team that started the company.
Yeah, like 5 in the operational team, and then the two guys who brought us on board, 2 professional gamblers, and they just told us to do everything. It was just like, go build a platform. Here's an engineering team. Here's some resources. Go after it, and we did. It was a lot of fun, and we had a bigger team out of Antigua where kind of the money came from, and we were licensed, and a team of engineers out of India and a few others. But it was crazy. We'll do a whole other podcast on that one, Gary. I promise you. I'll figure those stories for an hour.
Did you exit that company? Was there an exit on that company or not?
So there was an exit. Not I wasn't part of it. I'm not going to lie. None of us knew like this. We didn't know what the term startup or entrepreneur or even equity was at the time. We were just having fun. Like we were working 80 hours a week and just building. And I think it gives us all a very good work ethic and a very good understanding of how business works and how it doesn't happen unless you actively make it happen. So the company was acquired. I'm not going to pretend I was part of the acquisition. I'd left for Paddy Power at that stage. But yeah, I think it was just a good grounding in how to build something and how you can see something going from nothing to something quite big in a
It
short
happens
space
very
of time.
quickly sometimes. I've seen it. So Click Software was a company called IET, came from Israel. I had named it Click Software, came up with a family of products, and who would have thought at the time when you have a little company that the company was sold to Salesforce for 1.35 billion, right? It was unbelievable. And you make
Yeah,
the name up. You're sitting on your notebook computer, and the mouse clicked and clicked, right? And software, because you bought a box, and all of a sudden people said, "I heard the name of the company." It couldn't. It was all made up, right? But what happens is you go down through, and I just talked to my friend that founded Otter. So last week, and he's north of 100 million ARR, Sam Liang, and we started our companies together. So we were side by side. So myself, Robin Hood, there, Luminar, we were all side by side in the same facility when we started our company in Menlo Park in
that's
26.
great.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But those are the success, and that's the beauty of working in a place like Los Angeles, or more importantly in Silicon Valley, right? Because that's where the stuff really happens. So when you went down through it, what are some of the common signs or red flags a company might be experiencing alignment issues? Because by the way, so Eva was my company, and we were doing alignment too. We started one of the first remote workforce management companies that we sold. Our Vizier Canada acquired the company. So those things are important, right? Alignment's important, especially today. But what are some of the signs or red flags that companies might experience to say they have a problem?
Yeah, it's I think the best way to answer that is probably by sharing my own experience where this came from. It was actually in my next company, Paddy Power. We were a small company when I joined. There's maybe 100 people in the online division. By the time I left, we had 5,000 people, and it was the biggest online gambling company in the world. They went on to acquire FanDuel, PokerStars, brands that everyone would be familiar with. So that was another kind of extreme growth in about 7.5 years. But it was in that company, I managed a team of about 30 to begin with, and it was so much fun. And we were award winning as a group, and we were nailing our metrics, and everything was rosy. And Ronan's ego was having the time of its life. But within 3 years, my team had grown to about 200 to 250. And I hadn't really advanced any of my practices. And so I was still using the same tools that I used with the team of 30, with the team of 200. And it just wasn't working. And we were not winning awards, Gary, and the numbers were not green anymore. And like it was a really difficult time for a period. And it was because the group had lost alignment. The quality standards were different. The way people were operating was different. They'd become kind of silos within the group, and it just wasn't consistent and aligned. And so that was my first experience of it. At the time, I wish I had Dawson at the time, but back then, I hired people and poured money into it. And over a couple of years, got kind of my hands back around it again, and got it back on track. But it was a real effort and energy, and I learned the hard way what happens. And I think to your question of like, how do you know when this is happening? It's quite silent. This is the challenge with it. Quiet quitting is something that doesn't hit you in the face. It used to be the Great Resignation a few years ago, and it's very obvious because you're like, churn rates have increased. What's going on here? We've lost 6 people. With quiet quitting and lack of alignment, you don't see that. It's just like we're not really moving at the pace we were, and we're not hitting our numbers. And I feel like I'm in a meeting about a meeting, and it starts to grind a little bit. And people that used to just do things without being asked just aren't doing that anymore. And people who went a little bit beyond just aren't going beyond anymore. So it's quite silent and a little tricky to identify. But if you have any of that sense in your company and you're feeling like, if ever you used to have this thing called the McDonald's question in Matchbook, where if you're ever sitting at your desk calculating whether you'd be earning more working in McDonald's because of the hours you're working, if you calculate the average, something's wrong. Like that's the moment at which it's clearly you're missing something, and that's it. Like if you're sitting in front of a spreadsheet at 9 p.m. at night and you're wondering what the hell you're doing it for, you clearly don't understand how it associates to the company goals and the company strategy, and you don't feel like you're part of it. So that would be kind of a few of those signs. If you have that feeling, or you're seeing that kind of lack of pace and it's just not working as smoothly as they once did, the likelihood is that there's an alignment issue or an engagement issue within your company.
You know, you've talked about high performers feeling stuck and underperformers coasting, which I've seen too, right? And sometimes you think you're pulling the, it's like the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. So how can an organization realistically identify and manage these exact situations?
So I would, there's a couple of things. One is it's not difficult to identify if this is a problem for you. We have a few different methods for doing it. Very quick, a handful of questions you can ask your people, and science will tell you if you have an engagement problem or not. So it's quite quick to identify if it exists. The likelihood is that it does. 60% of people have currently quit. They're the numbers. So you're going to have some people in your organization that are already doing this. So the assumption should be that it's there. And so if you just identify it or acknowledge that it is, then you move into the next stage, which is what do I do about this? That is now where it starts to become a little bit more fun. And in truth, what your people want, what everyone wants when they're in a community, is to feel like they belong. They want to understand what their position is. They want to feel recognized. They want to understand if they do what they're supposed to do, how it works its way up to the bigger picture. They want to be aligned with the mission. They want to be connected to people. They want all of those things. It's just like anyone else in any family or community or group. So you just got to start working on that, like thinking about how you can influence the environment in a way whereby those things happen. And so this is kind of where we come in, because we understand that and we understand what people need. We also understand that what people need already exists. You do not need to invent anything. Your organization already has all of the parts, all of the key pieces, all of the knowledge, all of the people that represent your company the right way, and you need to scale that essentially. You need to make it really easy to institutionalize that. All that knowledge, like Warren Buffett said, the companies that are going to succeed are those that can institutionalize knowledge and scale it, and then be able to spread that back to your people so that everyone starts to understand the same things and have a common language and understand what people do and how the company works and how they can affect change within the company. And you start to give people autonomy and mastery back in their work, and it just starts to improve from there. So I would say I wouldn't get overly hung up on, is there something happening to me, to what extent? Like, these are all just really good practices, and the difference between companies that are aligned and those are not is material enough that this is worth investing in.
Can you walk us through how Dozen uses AI to align employees' career ambitions with strategic company goals?
Yeah, of course. So if that's the kind of macro misalignment, disengagement kind of picture, at a very practical level, what we do is we take something that historically has been very, very difficult to do, which is to institutionalize or codify the knowledge from a company. So what we do is we take everything that you have in whatever form it is, and interviews and documents and videos and keynotes and all the stuff you've created that you probably share on email or is in SharePoint or somewhere, and we consume that. Now, what that's done is it's just digitized all of your company's knowledge. That now makes it possible for you to leverage that to create learning experiences and learning programs for your people. So what we help you to then do, and we can do this in minutes through our kind of AI platform, we essentially allow you to create learning programs from that in whatever form that you want. So if you want, my favorite one is an alignment program, where you essentially just explain to people the history of the company, how it began, why you named it, what it does, who your customers are. These sound really basic, but if you interview your people, I can guarantee you will get different answers to every one of those questions from everyone who fills the survey. So you can create programs, alignment, onboarding, management, leadership, sales enablement, anything at all, leveraging your institutional knowledge. And so as you're feeding this to people, and as you're teaching them and welcoming them into your company and advancing them in their career, you're feeding them consistently with what makes your company really special, the kind of DNA of what makes you really special. So that's it. We institutionalize knowledge. We help you build programs really, really quickly And then we help you to serve these programs out to your people, and our engagement rates are like 10x industry average because we've introduced gamification and a bunch of other kind of mechanics that just make it a very enjoyable experience for people to consume. And then next stage for us is actually to move almost from that organizational-led approach where they determine the programs that get served into one whereby the employees can actually control this themselves, and so it'll become employee-led learning and development. And what you can do as an employee is you can talk to Charlie, our platform, our AI platform, and actually get Charlie to build something for you, be a career path or a particular learning module or an experience that you want, or introduce you to someone in the company that can help you. Charlie's there to aid you in that. And so when you get to that point, you're now employee-led, you've given total autonomy over someone's development and they're learning back to them. Now you're in a totally different world in terms of your ability to drive ambitious people in the right direction, but it's all aligned because you have powered Charlie with all of your institutional knowledge. So there's no risk that the learning is going to be in some random direction or determined by some course that you bought for someone online and you're not quite sure what's contained within it. So that's the model, and so we work with people and we can get them live. We get a program built in 60 minutes, something that used to take like months for an organization to build.
Yeah, no, I mean it's some, I've been working in AI for 29 years and this Gen AI stuff since 2016. Pre-transformer models, ladder networks, VAE, ontology, the whole 9 yards, knowledge graphs. And so when we're mapping this stuff out, then the kind of things we're seeing now, multi-agent, multimodal large language, which is the next thing, right? So we've been working on those things where we create teams of 14 of them that are a whole lot more effective than one that can go down thing as a think tank analyze it. It's an entirely different perspective. So for instance, one of the tools is 1,000 times faster than math than ChatGPT. 1,000. So what it does, they assign themselves roles. Well, imagine having a think tank that's assigned to your company and not one, right? And then when you start things like multimodal LLMs, where they're able to, senses, they're looking at your body language, they're understanding your eyes, they can do all kinds of things incredible. All of a sudden, the dynamics start to shift, right? And then you talk about knowledge. You can have the knowledge of everything in there, right? You could have a mentor on steroids to help you guide you
100%.
through, right? Based
Yeah,
on how you learn. My first graduate degree is in psychology, and talking about how you can learn, and everybody wants to learn in a different way. You could actually create these scenarios where people they learn it the way they stay with you engaged because they're learning and they feel good about themselves. And like you said, it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you have the basic physical needs met, then the safety needs and affection, self-esteem, and self-actualization all the way up, people will stay, right? I had a 4-star admiral on my show, and Admiral Bill Owen, and he used to be the #2 guy in the U.S. military. And I said to him, what makes a great leader? And one of the things that caught my attention, he said, I was in Operation Desert Storm on an aircraft carrier, and I knew that 10% of my pilots were going to get killed, right? And I was going to be the one signing the letters to their families, to their husbands and their wives and their mothers and their fathers and daughters and sons. I'm the one that's going to be doing it. And he said, a tear went down my cheek, and it got picked up on the monitors on the aircraft carrier. And he said, when people know that you care about them, they care about you. I'll never forget that. It was really interesting. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's incredible.
And then the other thing it's interesting, is that I was with Rupert Murdoch's right-hand man, Andrew Straczynski, and we had dinner out in Palo Alto. And he said something interesting too. And I said, how do these, I know a lot of billionaires, friends of mine in the tech industry. And he said, I've studied 3,000 entrepreneurs. And I said, what's the one thing they all have in common? And he said, amnesia. They never focus on the past. None. They just let it go. It disappeared.
That's very good. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. And but it's the truth, because every one of the billionaires I know is never, ever, no matter how many times they've been married or divorced, no matter what, the past, other than contextual, right? From a contextual standpoint, they never, ever talk about it. Never.
Yeah.
Because he said
it's
like boat anchors holding your boat back, right? When you start dwelling on the past, look at the future.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think some people just need that little bit of direction for them. And once they have that North Star, I think it's, I have faith in people's ambition and conviction once they have that little bit of direction.
Well, the other thing is, I did this TED talk a few years ago. I talked about unleashing your human potential. And I said that things like, be able to truly visualize where you want to go. In psychology, we call it the Pygmalion effect, the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Rhonda Burns and the book that she got a lot of her stuff from was called As a Man Thinketh. But essentially, you paint the vision of where you want to go, right? That's how it is.
Yeah.
And every one of the people that I know in the beginning, they say, oh, it's just luck. But when you do it, they really painted the picture, right? I've heard that time and time again, too.
Yeah, 100%.
You've mentioned Daniel Pink's pillars, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. How does your leadership style reflect those values?
Good question. I think the leadership style I landed on maybe 10, 12 years ago is one of support leadership. I I like to empower people and give them the opportunity to do their best work. And then my job, I feel, is to get the blockers and the barriers out of their way. So, um, as a rule, I tend to bring people into the team that are better than me and smarter than me. And ultimately, if I can make myself unemployed, I think that's the greatest sign of success, if that makes sense. But then you've got to put your faith in those individuals. Like, they're not going to hang around too long if they're going to be overly dictated to. So for me, I try and hire people that are better than me and smarter, and then just give them the capacity and the ability and the kind of infrastructure to go and be successful. And I almost work for them. It's kind of how I think about it, and they tell me what they need, and they tell me what their problems are, and that's my job, is to get them out of their way and let them go and kind of do their best work and be the best person themselves.
Ronan, you've raised what, 2.3 million for the pre-seed round. Yeah, I know when I did that, we raised 7 million over a couple of months in 2016, but the market's way different now. So,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give to other startup founders looking to raise money in this climate, in the current climate?
I would say what used to be kind of the right level of traction and product and all of that to reach a Series A is probably now what you need to reach a seed, and what you used to need to achieve a seed is now a pre-seed. And I think the barriers to creating something are lower than they've ever been before, and so the expectation of what's required to get funded is higher.
You're saying the barriers are lower?
The barriers are lower to build.
Yeah, the barriers are lower, but the speed is going up dramatically, right? So if you
unbelievably,
you don't have time to do things now, because if you think about it too long, there's a competitor that's already done it and they're already exited.
But it's funny, that used to like haunt me, the idea that someone has got LinkedIn will release a feature and all of a sudden your startup's gone. You were just a feature on a roadmap of a bigger company, or someone is doing what you're thinking about doing, and that haunted me for a couple of years. And eventually I kind of stopped and just thought, look, it's not always the case. And even if they are doing it, well, good luck to them executing better than the team that we're putting together. So I just think always, over deliver. So if you believe that the requirement to get a pre-seed is to have a product and one customer not paying you, and a team of X people, well, then just go a little beyond that and then come back for the money in a pre-seed round, and people are going to be much more engaged. And there's a lot more you can do with a lot less now. You can build something like Claude, even if you're not an engineer. You can use your network to find your first customer. You can, there's lots you can do with very little. So I would say get as far as you can with as little as you can, and then go and tell your story. Now, it all is, on the back of you having a very strong fundamental belief in what problem you're solving. And just make sure that the problem is big enough. Make sure it's big enough. Make sure you're being ambitious enough, and make sure you're being thoughtful in how you're going about it. And then just go a little bit further than people expect you to. And I think that's the best way to do it. I also think, because I had my own investment company as well, I loved investing in people who I felt going to do it with or without me. I was like, I'm either getting on this train or it's going straight past me. They're not hanging around waiting for me to get on and for me to make my mind up. So I think the more that you can just show people that you're going to be doing this, whether you get investment or not, whether you get investment from one person or not, it doesn't matter. This is happening. it's inevitable. The future you're declaring is inevitable. The fact that you're going to succeed is inevitable. Up to you whether you want to join me on the journey. It just changes the conversation a little bit. So all of those things, I think, if you can kind of manifest those into something, I think it's great. And I think some of the other components that you then think are critical become less. So if you have all of that, it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 customers or 100, because you've got that momentum behind you anyway. It doesn't matter if they're paid or unpaid client. It doesn't, those things are less critical than you having that conviction.
We're coming up to the top of the show. If you want to stay on after we're done, we can speak for a few minutes. But closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you, Ronan?
Yeah, I think closing thoughts from me are don't wait to solve the problem of misalignment in your company. I think when I talk to some CEOs and senior leaders, they have a long list of problems they need to solve. They generally start with revenue, and then their product, and then their marketing, and they'll come back to the people stuff, right? We'll fix that after. You can't solve any of those things without actually enabling your people. Your people are the people who are going to solve those problems for you. And I promise you, if you invest in them and drive that level of alignment and engagement with your people, your problems will start to go away. So that's my closing thought, is like, don't wait, don't hang around, don't push this down the road, tackle this. You can do it quickly with a relatively low cost and very little investment from you and your people. That's just where we are technically today. You can achieve that. So that's my kind of closing thought. And you can reach me on Ronan at Docent.io or on LinkedIn. Just hit me up, and I'll be very happy to share more and learn a little bit more about what you're up to.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And thanks to all of you joining one more time. GSD presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. We'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Thanks, Ronan, and thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.